Welcome, my friends. Welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Friday, May 27th. We are here live. It is a freaky free-for-all Friday. John and Joel are joining me. Phone lines are open. Calls are already starting to come in, so jump in and join us. Anything goes today. If you have a question, a comment, a topic, anything at all you want to talk about, the weirder the better. I'd like to end the week on a lighter note, have a little fun with it. So we'll get to your calls here pretty quickly. Go ahead and start lining them up. 855-950-3835. I have just a couple things on my list. Then we'll bring in John and Joel and find out what's on their mind. And then we'll get to your calls and questions. One of the things, obviously, we've been talking a lot about is the economy, and it's what I spend most of my time watching right now. It doesn't appear that there is any way to avoid the recession. Not everybody agrees on that, but I just don't see any way out of where we are now other than a recession. That's what ultimately will bring prices back in line. Most of the economists that I follow are predicting probably 12 to 18 months is what we're looking at. And all of the numbers right now are starting to signal that change is happening. So all of the numbers we've been talking about setting records are starting to turn. The real estate market is turning. Sellers are now lowering their price more often than raising their price. Those are the shifts we're starting to see. Equipment orders, for a while you could put in all the equipment orders you wanted, you weren't getting them. Now those orders are being canceled. The stock market is acting a lot like it does when we're at the top. We've got big up days, then big down days, lots of volatility. That's what we tend to see at the top. This has been a really volatile week. It's actually been a very volatile month for the stock market. So we'll keep an eye on that kind of stuff, but it looks like the market is about to make that correction. And I think 12 to 18 months is probably a pretty good prediction, meaning if we're going to be in this for 12 to 18 months, you could start looking for those big opportunities probably 6 to 8 months from now is when a lot of that stuff is going to start making itself known. All right, let's bring John in. And you know what? Let's just bring them both in so we can just talk over each other like we're so good at. Hey, guys, good morning.
How you doing on that?
Good. See, I won't even say which one I'm saying good morning to. That way you can both talk. All right.
We're going to all have to do this in one room at some point so we could have like a hand signal or something.
Yeah, that would be fun. We need to do that. Looks like I need to get back out on the road with the coach again. Not. I'm good for the summer. I'm staying right where I am. Although summer hasn't even started here yet. I don't know what's going on this year. It still feels like March here. I swear we haven't had any real heat yet. We've had an awful lot of rain. So I don't think we have to worry as much this year about wildfires as normal because it's pretty wet. I've got one thing, and then we'll throw it to you guys and see what you've got. You know, I don't know that I've ever even heard this term. This is a part on a Freightliner. The CPC, the Common Powertrain Control Module. I don't think I've ever even heard that term. It's a little computer board kind of thing, and they are being stolen all over the place, I guess. One auction, where was that auction? One auction in Pennsylvania, Marietta. 24 trucks had this module stolen out of it. An owner-operator came back to his truck, had a hole in his passenger window, figured they stole the stereo or other stuff in his truck, All they wanted was this module. I guess it's easy to get. You take a couple screws out of the dash, pull the thing out. Where did I see this price? These things are, I guess, being stolen all over the place. The ones they're looking for from 2014 to 2017. But I also saw a price in here somewhere. These things are selling on the secondary market for some crazy price. Where did that go? They've been on national back order for over a year, and it takes 5 months to get one right now. It's a $1,400 part. They're selling for as much as $5,000 online, if you can find one.
Wow.
Yeah. I've never even heard of that part.
That's interesting. So it's the powertrain control module, PCM?
Yeah, they're calling it the
it,
CPC, Common Powertrain Control Module.
Okay. That's crazy. So there are generic powertrain control modules out there now that we use in motorsport, where you use, now if I were to build a new car now, I would have a steering wheel with a bunch of buttons on it, and it would interface with the control module that handled the power to everything under the sun, including the shifting. And they're totally open. You can do whatever you want. You've got inputs and outputs, and you can make it do all sorts of things through some computer software. I just wonder why someone, if that's the case, or if this is some legacy electronics that, some plant didn't get back up and running again or whatever after COVID, why isn't the aftermarket jumping in here and making something like that? To me, seems like an opportunity, especially if they're going for like $5,000 a piece.
Yeah, well, actually, I just found another line here. They're saying that chips inside the CPC are so in demand that black market prices top $8,000 for this part.
Wow.
Yeah. And when it's, this owner-operator, he's looking at, 5 months with no truck right now, because that seems to be about the soonest you can get one in if you get on the list, is 5 months. That's just crazy. And like I said, all the calls we take here, all the problems, all these years, I don't think anybody's ever called when this was the problem. Or if it was, we didn't know that it was. But why are they so in demand all of a sudden?
It is interesting. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what's going on there.
Huh. Yeah, it's a big enough problem that Daimler Trucks released they put out a press release.
Wow.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah, that's, again, some enterprising. The thing is, you'd come up with one or come up with a workaround for that just in time for the chips to all of a sudden be available and cheap again. Maybe that's why no one goes out on the limb to make an aftermarket part to do the same thing.
You would think. Quick update, fuel is up again 18 cents for the week, and the trend wasn't good. Monday it was up 0, then 1 cent, 2 cents, 5 cents, and then finished up Friday 11 cents. So doesn't look like fuel prices are coming down anytime soon. So what we talk about on the show is just that much more important.
Oh, absolutely. You got to wonder how much, I've been following, I get a different view of the economy from my seat, as we've talked about in the past. And this deal that I got invited to last week, which looks like I'll have a gig with them for the rest of the year, if not forever, if I want it. This Ferrari thing, I mean, I feel like I just spent a week with Lifestyles of Rich and Famous. It was so over the top. And when you talk to these people and go to dinner with them, they have zero concerns about the economy. Like they are, it's like nothing I've ever done before. I mean, I've always worked with, really tight budgets and had to be super efficient with teams that I've worked for, and doing this professionally, it's always been really hard. Don't get me wrong. I've dealt with wealthy people. This is a whole nother level. I watched a guy crash one car and buy two more while he was there. And these are $300,000 cars. Like I'm going to put it in order for two. We're going to fix that one. It's going to become my track day car. And, these are people who've sold big tech businesses and things, and it's just over the top. And I honestly think, just to generalize it, they may be the people who are actually benefiting from high prices right now. Because if you look at corporate profits, look at the profits of the oil companies right now, if you want to be disgusting. It's insane. And I think that they're so far up that they're actually benefiting from the rest of our pain. I won't tell them that in person, but it's just, it's crazy. It was nuts. Like I'm still pinching myself. And I raised my daily point, and again, just as a point of reference, it was way more than I used to make in a week at Pittsburgh Power. And that was my daily rate.
Yeah.
So it was just,
well,
they had me 5 days.
You're right. There is a lot of that going on, and it seems as we get to the top, it's happening even more. There is still a lot of money out there. There's still a lot of people spending crazy amounts of money, but it just, I think the signs are there now. That can't go on. Now, how bad do those people get hurt at the very top? It really depends. You've got people at the top that are spending money like that don't really have it. It was just easy to borrow money.
Yeah.
It was easy to generate money. It was easy to get investors in. It was just a time where money has been really easy to come by. And that's what causes inflation. When money's that easy to come by, it just generates all kinds of demand. And it happened at a time when we had very limited supplies. And we're seeing that. We're still seeing shortages, but we're also seeing those signs that this market is starting to turn. I mean, here we still have this part being stolen, and we can't keep trucks on the road. But on the other hand, I'm seeing more and more posts on social media, drivers and owner-operators looking for their next company to go work for or drive for. I'm seeing more and more of those posts as well. And I think we're going to start seeing the trucking companies start to fail. I don't think we're very far away from that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with the washouts coming here. And again, I think how fast this all occurs will really kind of dictate how the successful companies are going to be able to run in the near-term future. I think if we see this washout happen relatively quickly, it's going to bring a bunch of drivers into the marketplace that can go to work for the more stable companies. We're going to see demand tighten up a little bit, which is going to help to drive rates back up. We're going to see the fall off here, and then eventually things are going to start to come back up. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all develops. I know there are several companies out there that we share information with and work back and forth with that are kind of taking the same position on it. They're waiting for the washout. We think we're going to pick up drivers and we'll actually come out stronger on the other side. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this works.
Yeah, this article about this part shortage, they are talking to the one, actually he's a small fleet owner, but his problem right now is, and he's one of these cases that I have a feeling was so close to the edge. Read his story, started driving in 2009, and just in the last couple of years, started buying trucks. And right now, of his 3 trucks, 2 of them are in the shop. One of them with this part down that he has no idea when he may get it back out on the road again. You look at that, you guys know the numbers. 3 trucks, you're not generating a ton of extra income. In fact, a lot of guys running 3 trucks don't even realize it, but they could be barely breaking even or losing money on their second and third truck. Now you park them at a time like this. A company like this, couple of trucks, these guys are just, casualties waiting to happen.
Yeah, and I think the people that got in recently here, that they're seeing this run up in transportation and they got in recently and they really haven't had time to establish relationships to find parts like this. I mean, we work very, very hard to maintain relationships with multiple different parts vendors. It's been more challenging for us to get parts, but has it sidelined us? Absolutely not. Shane, my shop manager, he basically full time on the phone, just constantly talking to people, maintaining that relationship to make sure that we can get hands on parts when we need them. Sometimes it gets a little ugly price wise, but it is what it is in times like these. And when you get a fleet of 4 or 5 trucks, the guy's been in the business for 3 years, and now we've got a situation like we've got now. They really don't have the relationships established in order to call in a favor and say, hey, I really need this part. A lot of times these dealers have these things in reserve, and it's their trusted people that they deal with. That's where those parts are going. So I can see what you're saying. The guys that just haven't been around that long are really going to suffer.
Yeah, that relationship with the shop is another good point. It's something we've talked about forever, and this is a good time to have a relationship like that, and it's a bad time not to have one. Because you're right, there's nothing fair about how business works. You might be sitting in a shop for 3 or 4 days, and that shop might tell you that they don't have the part, and for all you know, the truck in the bay right next to you just got your part. It happens all the time, but that's how business works, and honestly, it's how it should work. If I'm in business, I'm going to take care of the people who are loyal to me first. That's just how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to build those relationships. You talk about it all the time, and it's times like now where that becomes critically important. I mean, we could have probably in the past, several years, been beating up our parts suppliers and, just trying to drive the price down on everything and kind of trying to not take advantage of them, but, try to get every last penny of value out of them that we could have. And we typically don't do that. And now when things are tight, we've got some access to parts availability that most fleets don't, and it's worked out well for us.
Yeah, there's a saying in the investing world, and it really applies right now because we've been watching this, and you've talked about it with rates and your customers, and you're still on your contract freight. You have good contracts. Those rates are going to hold. You weren't getting maybe the absolute best rates when everything peaked because you stayed loyal to your customers. And it doesn't mean you don't try to maximize profit and get the best rate you can, but there's limits in there. And the saying in investing is that pigs get fat, but hogs get slaughtered. So it's okay to be a little piggy once in a while when the market's in your favor and you go out and you take advantage of that, but don't be a hog. And I just think there have been a lot of hogs at the trough, and I think we're about to see a lot of hogs get slaughtered. Hey, John, I was just thinking about this. You seeing any similarities in the racing world from 08, 09?
Not yet. Not at all. The 08, 09 thing, I was in a situation where, how should I put this? I have to compete with people who do this business as a hobby. I've got wealthy team owners of great big construction companies, to name one, and some other guys who do this for fun, and it's a fun business, right? Which is really not fair for a guy who has to eat. And in 08, let's go all the way back to 02, 3, 4, 5, 6. I had about 6 employees full time, and probably another 6 that did fly-in work for me. I was running 2 rigs. I was running 2 rigs back when fuel got to $5 a gallon back then. That sort of hurt us, but we were just able to spread it across our customers and just charge more. And we were able to do that. So I was running a nice little business with a few employees, and I bought their health insurance, and I paid them fairly well, and things were going along nicely. And then 08 happened, and it was a race to the bottom that you'd see rate-wise with trucking. So I had teams that I was competing with who ran this as a hobby business, that were just cutting my throat. Like they were doing the service of, maintaining these cars, getting them to the track in the truck, which is kind of what my business model was, and competing. And again, our customers were wealthy, or they had some sort of wealthy benefactor. If they weren't wealthy, or they actually had real sponsorship from time to time, which is more rare in this sport than people realize. But regardless, we were providing service. We were getting out there, working hard, getting it done. Everybody was getting paid. We had a tiny bit of profit at the end of the year, which I was okay with, but nothing really in the bank. But we were able to, pay ourselves and do well. In 2008, all of a sudden, money did tighten up pretty quickly. And you saw people on my end just start doing it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And it got down to went from a bunch of small teams like mine in the series that we were in to 2 or 3 mega teams that were owned by really wealthy people that were running drivers at a deficit. But they were just doing it to do it. And I had to stop. I literally had to let my people go. I was stuck. Like I was in an odd situation where, I just had to hit the brakes, no pun intended. I had zero money in the bank. I had some credit card debt that had built up from running lean in 2008 and trying to compete with these guys before I said no. And went back to working by myself in the shop doing restoration work and some fly-in work here and there, that was just clean profit to survive. I'm not seeing that yet. I'm not seeing anyone dropping prices yet. Maybe it'll happen next year. I mean, it might. Who knows what will happen over the winter when contracts are done and people are doing this. I see zero evidence of that. I see right now, on our end, there are new cars being bought. The team that I work for, we grew from a little 1-car operation to 3. One of the things that I engineer for. This Ferrari thing was just such an eye-opener to me. Like, these people are not slowing down yet. And again, maybe it'll happen. Maybe it'll be a crash. Or, I like to say maybe we're living through another roaring 20s 100 years later, and we all know what happened after the last roaring 20s. The separation in wealth, you see, but we've got some really healthy service businesses kind of like mine. I mean, I could be their pool boy or their boat boy doing what I do, right? I don't have to be working on the race car. It's no different, though. I'm in the same boat as maybe the guy who does the fancy landscaper they have. But, what I do is specialize. I'm really good at it. And, that I demand a premium for it. But it's really no different. I'm a service business, and I'm serving really wealthy people, which is good. I mean, we've got teams I'm working for are paying mechanics like $750 a day right now, just because skilled people are hard to find. It's craziness. It really is. And they're doing well, and I want to see them do well. I mean, but that's the answer to doing well now. Like the new middle class or the new, I don't know how to put it. I mean, to make it, you almost have to be, except being in the gig economy, make as much money as you can while you can, and do that and deal with the repercussions later. Hopefully, it's a little bit away and be able to survive when things tighten up, if they tighten up. But I don't see any signs of it yet. I really don't. Not for many of the racing organizations, not for many of the teams that I contract to. Like, I don't see it yet. And that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It might happen hard and fast. But who knows? That there might be a run on the banks next month or something, right? It could happen again.
Yeah. It's it is interesting this time, but I think we're seeing the biggest divide we've ever seen. You talked about the middle class, and the problem with the middle class is they are kind of disappearing. We've been talking about that for decades, and it seems like it's happening more and more now. You've got, like you said, these teams and people with just all kinds of money to spend on whatever they want to spend it on. And on the other end, you've got, like I said, when I, out on the road and parking at Walmarts, I saw more and more people living in their cars that didn't look like people who should be living in their cars. That's just, they're struggling at the very bottom of this economy right now.
So kind of to your guys' point here, I don't know if either of you saw this in Freight Waves. There's an article that says, shippers ready to fight truck driver overtime bill in Congress. Have either of you saw that article?
I read that one yesterday.
Okay, so and it talks about this well, they call it the National Industrial Transportation League. And it's interesting how they look at this. And as a driver, this really pissed me off. It really, really pissed me off. So it says whose members include Cargill, Georgia Pacific, and Marine Drayage Company, IMC. And they talk about how they don't believe that the bill is going to gain much momentum in Congress. However, if something were to happen on it, I'm sure we could move pretty quickly to mitigate it on Capitol Hill. This was one of the quotes out of this. And then a gentleman from a brokerage company talked a little bit, and he said something about the potential threat if this gains steam, and if there are bells and whistles affixed to it, it could stand to undo the progress we've made to deregulate the freight environment. So obviously, the big companies are they're seeing the deregulation of the freight environment is a huge plus to them. And at the very end of where they had these quotes, it said, in theory, drivers would have to be paid for a lot of time that they're not currently being paid for, which would not be sustainable. But yet they can afford to have all these people lobbying Congress and pay for all these attorneys and pay for all this stuff in order to make sure that we don't get overtime pay. To me, it's just nuts. I mean, these are not companies that are not making profits. They can afford to lobby Congress, and sometimes we talk about regulation as this horrible thing inside the trucking industry. Sometimes I think lobbyists are probably worse than a regulation because it's kind of a hidden regulation. They are supremely confident that they can shoot down anything that they want and kind of control the narrative on whether a driver gets paid overtime or not. And they could care less about the safety issues connected with this and all the things that we've talked about over the last several weeks. It's just purely a profit motive. We don't care if the highways are safe. We don't really care about your standard of living. Basically, they just dumped the deuce on 2 million truck drivers in their opinion. And it just really kind of sucked. And when you start to talk about the disappearing middle class, this is a big part of it. It's concentrating wealth, I think, in these big corporations. And quite honestly, in this particular instance, they're just taking it right out of the pocket of the truck drivers, in my opinion.
I've got some opinions on this that are aligned with people, but any corporation, any big corporation, being in trucking, whatever it may be, it's publicly traded. Their only responsibility is to make sure the stock dividends increase every quarter. If they don't, someone's head rolls. When you get to a point where there's only so much you can cut, and it gets back to labor, and we can talk about this about sending manufacturing overseas. I just read an article that some workers in a Mexican GM plant that builds Chevy pickup trucks just got a raise from like $325 to $355 an hour, right? So how do you compete with that? Like, what happens? GM's profits are high. I mean, I'd personally sooner buy a Toyota that was built here in the United States than a Chevy that's built in Mexico. I want the workers to make the money. I don't give a flying, what about corporate profits. I don't. I'm not invested in the stock market. I don't care. I do have some eat the rich tendencies, even though I make money off of them, which I don't mind. I mean, I'll gladly separate some really wealthy guys from some of their money and charge them an obscene amount of rate a day. But I do ship it, other people can. So I do have a specialized work that other people don't do. You can't just plug somebody into that situation I went into last week and do it. But so those of us who want to be middle class, and I'm living maybe a middle class life. I've got a $150,000 house on the outskirts of Pittsburgh that my ex and kids live in, and I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. And kids are expensive nowadays. I don't care what anyone says. You're not raising a family of 4 on anything under 6 figures and doing it well. It's cell phones, it's activities, it's we've been through gymnastics and cheer and everything under the sun with the girls. And you can't tell the kids no to that stuff. You don't tell your 12-year-old to go out and get a job if she wants to do gymnastics. Gym fees $300 a month. It's insane. But life is just expensive, and those people need to make money, and I don't mind spreading it around. I mean, I feel like this money pump, like it just comes to me and goes back out.
No, I understand the point that corporations have to make a profit, and I don't begrudge them that, but there has to be some ground rules at some point somewhere.
But where's enough, though, is the thing. It's always more and more and more and more, and you get to the point where you can only become so efficient, right? And then the next efficiency thing is, well, okay, we close this plant and make our Chevy trucks in Mexico because it's way cheaper, even with the tariffs and whatnot, to do that. But that's what's gone on, and their profits go up and they go up and they go up, and they're unregulated. And it'd be cool if there was some way. I don't know how to put it without going super heavy regulation, but put some sort of guidelines on, and the politicians are all bought and paid for, and they're all those corporate profits go, the biggest thing they do is buy their lobbyists who are ex-politicians who know who to talk to, who know how to get whatever done that they need to get done. And it's across every industry. It's not just trucking. It's everywhere. I mean, it's just
no, you're absolutely right. And I guess that's kind of the point I'm making here is that lobby is just, they have a ridiculous amount of power with that lobby that just, it basically doesn't allow any of us to be included in the process when you have that very strong lobby there. There's nothing that me or you or Kevin or anybody else can do because we don't possess that very strong lobby up in DC that's whining and dining these politicians that, I don't know. It seems corrupt, I guess. It's just not in any ways to put it. It's horrible. Yeah.
And any politician on either side of the aisle is interested in getting reelected. So that's where the lobby comes in because that takes cash. And then they'll just do some trigger issues, be it Second Amendment or abortion or whatever. They'll get those 18% issues that they know they got that 8%, whatever, and they're going to be that person on that side, on that whatever issue it is that they're going to go with on either side. And then they get the lobby cash, helping them out. And then all they care about is getting reelected. They don't care about anything else. And then when they're finally done being elected, they'll go become a lobbyist and make even more money. It's just how the whole system works.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about Russian oligarchy, and it isn't a whole lot different when you sit down and think about it. It is not a whole lot different. It's kind of sad, and the worse this gets, we see the middle class just continue to shrink and shrink and shrink, and at some point it's going to be gone. You know what I mean? And then what?
The knock-on effects of that, like if you look at this baby formula thing, right? So, after the Depression, there were the antitrust laws in place that had slowly been repealed ever since, right? Reagan got rid of some, Clinton got rid of a whole lot more, and you're starting to see monopolies again. And, so the fact that there was one plant that made that much of the baby formula had no other reason than the fact that they could, right? And they pretty much had that monopolized. Well, that plant goes down, and look what happened. So it's a knock-on effect of that stuff being loosened up to that degree.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree. There's some things that I think we really need to look at again. I mean, early on in my career, I would have described myself as hardcore conservative and would have supported a lot of the stuff that I'm looking at now going, maybe that wasn't such a good idea after all. You got to look at it honestly and looking at it over the course of 35 years, I can guarantee you there were a lot of things that I supported early on that probably just, in terms of employees, owning a mid-sized business that we actually care about our people and we want to see them do well. And there are things that we would like to do as a company in terms of adding value to a driver's time that really, because of the way the marketplace is and groups like this, that they completely know that drivers are not being paid for all their time. They get it. They understand it. They don't want to deal with it, and they're going to lobby against it, and they're going to win that battle up there. Small company like we have, I mean, we don't have any hope in hell of going to Washington, D.C. and getting anything changed. And so we just got to continue the status quo of, kind of paying by the mile, regardless if we think it's right or not. And, I think everybody up in the office thinks that it sucks that it has to be that way. But what do? It's very, very difficult to deal with.
Well, I think we're
Yeah,
heading into a time economically where I'm not sure what the outcome is going to be, but I think a lot of these things are going to change. Something different is going to happen during this recession. I'm not sure what it is, but you look at all the numbers, and no matter how far back you go in history, we've never seen anything like what we're dealing with right now. And something is going to change throughout this. And, one of the things I've always said about if you change drivers' pay, if you look at the publicly traded trucking companies now, so we can look at their data. They have to file it every year. We can see what their profit is. There's not a lot of profit there. I mean, this is an industry where they run on pennies of profit per mile, and we make it up with productivity. Just get more miles, get more miles. If we attempt to make this shift to pay drivers by the hour, to pay them overtime, you can't really pay them more than what they're making now. There's no profit there. When you look at how many drivers an average fleet has and what just a small bump in pay would do to their profit, that's not sustainable for them. So what has to happen is prices of everything have to go up. And I think that's where we're going to see so much pushback, because like Joel, your example here, these aren't carriers fighting paying drivers more. These are companies that have technically nothing to do with paying a driver. They're not,
and they're driving the agenda.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, they have almost nothing to do with our industry other than they use our services, but they're the ones now in Washington dictating how much we should be able to charge them.
That's exactly right, and this is problematic. I mean, take any one of the three people that were quoted in here: Ann Warner and Jeff Tucker and Avery Weiss. So you take those three people. Let's trade places for a couple months. You come get my truck, and then you come back and tell me that there's no time value associated with what I do. They're looking at it from a bean counter perspective. It's all productivity. The human aspect is taken out of this. Look, how many industries is the expectation out there to work 70 hours week in and week out? How many industries in the United States does that happen?
Not only does that not happen in other industries, but how did we get to the point where, as drivers, the average response to this is, what do you mean I can only work 70 hours?
You're exactly right. When you're going to hire somebody, it's about how many miles am I going to get?
Yeah.
They're not even, they're basically concerned. It's like we've been brainwashed since deregulation to think in a certain way, and it's been pretty damn effective on the parts of the companies or the groups like this National Industrial Transportation League. They've had pretty good results in getting drivers to think in a particular way. And then when you do think about paying them by the hour, they think it's a scam or how you cheating me, because they're so used to seeing this pay by the mile and how many miles I can get without any regard to how many hours are actually going to be out on the road. And the bottom line is, Kevin, and this, it impacts our health in a negative way, which has a huge cost to society. When we only think about productivity, we're running the trucks as fast as we can possibly run them. And we all know what that's doing with the big oil. It's just inflating their profits. It's not really profitable for the trucking company itself. We know what it does to maintenance costs. I mean, that can elevate maintenance by up to 37%, in my opinion, from things that I've seen. So there's a lot of cost associated there that we don't necessarily see in the background. And so then when they say, oh, how could we possibly afford to pay him overtime? It could be done. There is no doubt about it, but it's going to take some, the government's going to have to get involved, because the big corporations just absolutely are not going to let that go. I mean, that pretty much tells you where they're at. We know you're doing work, and we are not going to pay you for it. They're flat out telling you that. We know you're doing the work, but we are not going to pay for it, and we're going to fight you if you try to get paid. And that's just nuts. I don't know. You just shouldn't do that to people, but it is what it is.
Yes, it is. Any other thoughts?
That's so tough, because if the government jumps in, that'll be filed under big government and regulation and stifling regulation and not friendly to profit and so forth. It's just not going to fly. I hate to say.
No, I agree with you. It won't, and it's unfortunate. Because everybody looks back at the craziness that we had before when the industry was regulated, and it was overregulated. There is no doubt about it. And I'm not suggesting any type of massive regulation like we had before, but the free for all that we have now. The major corporations are doing well with the unregulated environment that we're in right now. It's the drivers that are taking it on the chin, and there's no doubt about it. Employee drivers are really taking it on the chin here, and they're being taken advantage of. How we fix it, I don't know. I wish, as our own company, as Ploger Transportation, we could wave a magic wand and do certain things that I've been wanting to do for years in regards to pay, but when you got groups out there like this that know what's happening and they're going to fight you on it, it becomes very difficult to do anything.
Well, one of the things we've got to throw into the mix here is the fact that a lot of this comes down to our own decisions as consumers as well. We want cheap stuff. And we were all fine with send all that manufacturing overseas so I can buy 27 widgets and I can afford it. And, Walmart is the ultimate example of that. Walmart figured out how to get people a lot of stuff really, really cheap, and they grew like crazy. And the one part of the economy that we've never been able to outsource is drivers. You can outsource manufacturing. You can outsource customer service. You can send a lot of jobs to other places around the world and save an awful lot of money. And we've done it with virtually every job we can. You can't do it with drivers. And that's, I think, why industry fights back so hard at anything that would improve driver pay, because it's the last area where, until we start seeing autonomous vehicles, which we are. I mean, that's the answer for industry. They finally figured out we can't outsource this job that's critically important, but look, we can get a machine to do it.
So think about this, though. Look at the Chinese are over here investing in this autonomous technology. They're going to own our supply chain completely. They're going to own it. And that's a national security risk. And, a computer doesn't care if you're an American or if you're a Chinese. It takes orders from whoever's sending it. And a Russian hacker or a Chinese hacker hacks into these autonomous trucks, and it shuts down the supply chain, and we don't have any drivers left. I mean, you think we have supply chain issues now? It's only going to get worse. I mean, on the surface, it looks great. And from the bean counter's perspective, oh my God, this is the greatest thing that ever happened. This will bite us in the ass. It is going to. It's a national security issue. In my opinion, when you're looking at the food service and the pharmacy, the medical, we need to limit the amount of autonomous technology that's going to be able to haul that stuff to a certain percentage of total capacity. Because if we don't, they shut down a pipeline on the East Coast a couple years ago, and look what it done to gas prices. You shut down trucks, what's going to happen?
Yeah,
and if you don't have drivers, I mean, real live people to put in those trucks, this is a major, major problem. And letting these foreign companies come in and invest heavily into this technology, especially the Chinese, who are absolutely our adversaries. It's bad enough we've offshored all of our industry to them, and now we're going to let them come in and take our autonomous, our supply chain through autonomous vehicles. To me, that's just crazy.
I agree with you.
How do you not let them
on that?
How do you not take their money? How does Argo AI or someone who does this stuff, or what is the Chinese one that's actually operating here, Kevin? You've mentioned their name before.
Too simple.
Or too. too simple. How do you stop that? Like, how do you stop a kid that just graduates from engineering school?
Well,
for how much money? Like, how do you curtail that? Effectively. I don't understand. Like, I don't know how. I don't know how you stop it. I can't. You could be as isolationist and as anti-globalist as you want to be, but it happened. It's not happening. It happened, and it happened because of us. It happened because we liked all that cheap stuff at Walmart. And, I remember a speech from George W. Bush a long time ago about you saying how good cheap stuff was, and you don't need to make much money anymore. That was a synopsis of it. That was not exactly what he said, but that was the speech. It's like, we've got all this free trade now, and we're not regulating the stuff coming from China. We're not throwing tariffs on it, so our companies are making money on stuff they're outsourcing there, and everything's good. And you've got cheap stuff to buy. And that was the book, the high cost of a low price. That is so true. I mean, it's amazing. But again, now with this autonomous stuff, I don't know how you stop it. I don't know how you get in front of it by, being more clever than they are on the hacking end, but on the security end and so forth. And we need to be some really smart people for that. But I don't know that there's any way to isolate ourselves from that sort of thing. And if you look at, the other places the Chinese are investing money, like North Africa, with all the infrastructure they're investing in there, they already realized that they're going to, they have a middle class that's actually growing. People in China actually want to be paid now for what they do, so they have some issues there with that. And it's, so they're already looking to, create an emerging economy where they could outsource their stuff to be done, which certainly isn't going to be here. But it's a force that's going to be here for a really long time, and they really are better long-term thinking than we are. A whole lot better. It's it's interesting.
Yeah. You are correct about that. They think in terms of hundreds of years or more, and we have a hard time thinking about 100 seconds anymore.
No, America.
That is the absolute truth. I mean, it's instant gratification, man. If it takes 5 seconds for your internet to connect, you're pissed off at the world. So I agree. It's crazy, but man, I mean, I can see a lot of very painful situations that we could be exposed to if we adopt a policy where we're just going to make everything autonomous, or as much as we possibly can, and we don't put some type of restrictions on this stuff. Will prices go up? Yeah, they're going to go up, but just having a very inexpensive transportation system, just so we can concentrate power or concentrate wealth at the corporate level that eventually is just sending it back to China, who wants to come kick our ass anyway, doesn't make any sense either. So I think we really got to take a long, hard look at this and come up with a better strategy than what we've got now. I think what we're doing now is a mistake.
I agree. Let's grab some calls here and find out what's on everybody else's mind. Ken in Indiana, thanks for being patient. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for taking my call. Hi, John. Hi, Joel. Got a question about injection timing. If you increase the injection timing, do you think that's a bad thing? Can it cause internal failures?
Yes.
Okay. I had
it really can. It needs to be early enough to get all the fuel burn. But the earlier in your engine there, Ken, the 14 liter, Detroit calls it beginning of injection. So you said that's an adjustment, DOI. So it begins at a certain degree before top dead center, certain position where the piston is. And then you have pulse width, which controls the end of injection, shall we say. So you've got X amount of pulse width and you've got beginning of the injection event. And if that happens too early, the piston's too far away and there's enough heat in the cylinder to ignite the fuel, as the piston's on its way up, it'll create a tremendous amount of cylinder pressure, which puts load on everything. I mean, just everything. What I've always struggled with a lot of tuners was going too far with the injection always. I would see things from some other shops, back when I was at Pittsburgh Power, it would just throw a bunch of timing at it, and the engine sounds great, and it has this nice bark whenever you step on it, and it feels super responsive, but it's just tearing itself apart. So that's my opinion on timing. Back in the old hot rod mechanical days, would make the injection as late as possible to and still get the fuel burned. And quite often, if it was cold or whatnot, I did some big cams and stuff that would slobber out fuel while they were cold because the injection was so late. And they looked when they idled, and they were dirty and awful. But man, once they were warmed up, they had a lot of power. But so you gotta be careful with that.
Yeah, I took my truck into Pittsburgh Power back in December.
Yep.
And I wanted to see how it was doing, and I had a complaint of a little bit of high EGT, and seeing if that might be able to be reduced. And I didn't know what the amount of how many degrees, the stock setting was. And I was given 16 degrees of injection timing, which I found out later after the Louisville Truck Show that that's like 3 times as much as normal.
Right.
Anyway, my engine lasted about another 7,000, 8,000 miles. I'm not sure exactly. And I dropped the valve. So I wouldn't have, wanted to affect the longevity of my high horsepower engine, but the Bruce was not willing to stand behind it. Even though,
well, again, go ahead.
So I've just heard him say you never, advance injection time, and that's what they did back in December, and then
right.
So I'm just, I got a $60,000 boat anchor now.
Wow. That advanced. So you were, and again, you were on the edge with that thing. That's, that engine was, I was still there when Sean was putting that together. That was sort of our holy grail engine. We did, I helped him do the cam timing. We did all sorts of neat stuff in that. That was a great engine. So the advanced, so you probably would have been better off, again, I'll get yelled at for this. Not that there's anyone to yell at me anymore. That's one of the joys of being on your own. So that probably cooled it off. So the extra advance gave a little more time for the fuel to burn. So probably cooled it off on the exhaust temp. But that was to me, that's a false. That's a Band-Aid or a crutch at best. They probably should just cut it back a little bit. You were probably burning as much fuel as you could efficiently burn in that engine and making the power that thing's making. And any more advance on it probably just increased the cylinder pressure to a large degree, and that was it. So even if you're watching your temp, you had no idea what's going on inside the cylinder there with that extra advance. There's no way for you as a driver to try to know what was going on. Yeah. So.
It had 37,000 miles on it too.
Oh man! So I'm sure Sean is heartbroken wherever he is now. That was we put a ton of time into that thing. So yeah, he was super proud of that. That was a neat build. Yeah,
I just got a bad program. So, all right. Well, that's the question I had. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for the call. Let's go to Iowa this time. Stephen, welcome to the program.
Hey, Joel. Hey, I was the one that was chatting with you a couple weeks ago about the per hour rate, and I hear you pushing for the per hour, getting rid of the per mile and getting everybody on the per hour. But I just want to ask, your family's trucking business has been in business for a fairly, a decent amount of time. and you guys have a decent amount of drivers, and you guys have also been paying by the per mile for quite a while. And what is your guys' safety rating for you guys as a company?
We have an excellent safety rating. I haven't looked at it on Safer System recently, but we have a much better than average safety rating, I can tell you that.
So your company has figured out how to hire the right drivers, to pay them by the hour, to make them productive, and also do it in a safe manner. So the per mile rate, it is what it is. The per hour, I would love to see it. You've said that you've tried it in the past and it hasn't been successful, and you guys are looking at a hybrid system now, which still includes another per mile rate, which drivers are, and like Kevin pointed out, we're so bad that we work so much that we need the federal government to give us a logbook to tell us we can only do 70 hours a week. So even in a hybrid system, if you give a driver any opportunity to make more, to do more miles, whether it's 5 cents or 10 cents, that driver is going to still push those miles. It's not going to cure the problem.
Well, you have to balance it. There is no doubt you have to balance the hourly rate with the mileage rate, and that's what we're kind of struggling with right now. Exactly how do we set that up? And we always try to tie. In a hybrid system, we're trying to tie that to some of our safety scores that we're getting from some of the onboard systems that we're using, like the Driver Eye. It scores the driver every day. So if we take that daily driver score and then we say, okay, we're going to do a hybrid system, they get $13.50 an hour plus overtime and 41 cents a mile if their safety score is at this level. And then maybe it goes down to 37 cents a mile, depending on where their safety score is. So you're right. This gets very, very complicated. I mean, you can really get lost in it really quick. There's just so many things you have to take into consideration. And I think most trucking companies our size, it is just such a complex issue that, it's just, what, the industry accepts this, drivers accept it, let's just pay by the mile, and it is what it is. I clearly see the need for something different. Spending 35 years and 4.5 million miles behind the wheel, what we're doing from a human level just isn't right. It's not. We should not be paying strictly by the mile. There is value associated with our time. Go ahead.
Your drivers for your company, on average, what are they making a year as a driver?
Yeah, I would say our average is probably around 85,000. I think right now I've got guys that are making. I've got guys making well over 100. Yeah.
And you're still complaining that it's not enough money.
It's not. It is not. When you look back in time, when we were regulated, and you look at the wages that drivers were making back then, your typical average driver was making the equivalent of a six-figure income. And I don't know that they were working as many hours as that we're working. Yeah, they make 85,000, but they're working 70 hours every week. If they were making that in 40, you wouldn't hear a peep out of me. If they were working 40 hours a week and making $85,000, you would not hear a peep out of me. I don't think a guy should have to run 4,000 miles a week. You know what? I don't care about the education level. If a guy is willing to come out here and bust his ass and work, he deserves to be compensated for it. I don't care about his pedigree. I care about his work ethic.
And $85,000 a year is a good number.
It is a good number at 40 hours a week. It's not so good at 70 hours a week. It's just, it's not.
I don't know, you got to compare out there. There's pilots. Pilots spend a lot of time to train to be a pilot, and they don't make $100,000 a year as a pilot.
They don't work near the hours either. They're not allowed to work that many hours.
Well, wait a minute. I'll jump in there.
But they're still gone away from home.
Starting wages for pilots are low, but there's also a career path for pilots that clearly If you stay a career pilot, you're making significantly more money than any truck driver by the end of your career. And here's another problem in truck driving with pay. We do not value experience at all in this industry.
We don't.
We just don't pay for experience whatsoever. We have companies that pay a driver with 30 years safe driving the same thing they pay a driver coming right out of school. There is no career path here.
No. There's not. And the other thing is, just from the purely human aspect of this, man, I have watched guys get divorced. I've watched families break up. I've watched guys that got into the business young, their health be destroyed. Trucking is hell on a person over time. It just is, especially if you're trying to maintain any type of family life. You want to be in that middle class. You want to provide for your family, and it's a hard road to hoe. There's no doubt about it, and I don't think that drivers are compensated fairly. They make $85,000. My stepson, he made over $100,000. He's doing multiple stops, unloading boxes, trailer loads of cookies every day. I mean, just busting his ass to get where he's at. And, I think most people don't realize that are making that $100,000 a year level in other industries or other career paths realize what a driver goes through to make that kind of money as an employee driver.
I think that $100,000 for 40 hours a week is going to push that autonomous stuff so much faster, because as you see, the free market just can't afford to pay it. If they could afford to pay it, they would be paying it.
Well, I hear that argument. I hear it, and I understand it to a certain degree. But yet, we were regulated in this industry from 1938 to 1979, and we had a very strong middle class. And so there are other efficiencies that can be. Well, obviously, it was different, but it doesn't change the fact that it happened. I'm just never that type of person that says it can't be done. I get it. There's challenges, but everybody just says, "Well, you can't do it. It can't be done. You can't do it." I don't buy that. It can be done, but you got to work at it. I do like anything else.
I do love hearing. Yeah, I do love hearing your passion for it. I know it sounds like I'm not for it, but I'm truly for the idea. Just figuring out. I do love hearing your passion.
You're a realist. I get it. My brother's the same way. It's point counterpoint. We have this discussion, and he is on that business end of it, where he's looking at the numbers every day and looking at the books. He loves the idea too. He's like, man, I wish we could do this for all of our guys, and I wish we can do this. And he looks at it kind of like you are, because you're looking at the numbers every day too. I'm not looking at the financial end of it every day. I'm out on the road still with my guys. I'm living the life. I see what happens. We go into shippers and receivers. They detain us at docks. They don't let us use restrooms. We can't get into break rooms. I understand what these guys are bitching about, because I live this stuff too. I see what it does to your home life. I see what it does to your health. And you know what? We just don't make enough money. That's the bottom line. How we fix it, I'm not 100% sure. I think we need to have this discussion and continuously have it. What really kind of disappointed me was that FreightWaves article where, the big corporations absolutely know this is happening, and they're going to fight to maintain the status quo. And that just kind of sucks. It really does. I hate to see that happen. And I guess it's because I'm attached to my guys, because I am out here with them. And I hate to see that happen.
Hey, Joel, take a deep breath. There's something really, really positive. There's something really positive that just happened here. You guys had a 15-minute debate, and nobody called the other one Hitler. That's progress.
Right. That's absolutely right. I get that there's two sides to the story. I really do. And maybe I'm out in fantasy land on this, but Kevin, you drove and you were subjected to it for a while. You know what's going on here and what an employee driver faces. And it can be better. Let's just put it that it can be better. It needs to be better. We need to do a better job here. Exactly how it happens, I don't have all the answers, and I'll be the first person to admit it. But it needs to be better.
I agree. There are clearly, it's an issue that I mostly stayed away from because I dealt with owner-operators and small fleets. And, with an owner-operator, it's not an issue at all. At all. Once you get to a small fleet, it becomes an issue again because now I have to pay drivers. So I've got to think about that. But
right.
I don't know. I definitely do not want to go back. I don't even like making comparisons prior to deregulation because regulation in trucking, what we had during the regulated time, was outrageously extreme. I mean, there were only a couple industries that we did that to: utilities, trucking, and the logic behind it probably made some sense. Although I think there may have been better ways of doing it, but the logic was it's way too expensive for a small company to take utilities. That's an easier example to understand. How do we wire an entire country for telephone and electricity and all those things? The cost of that is so outrageous that you have to provide some protection for the companies that are going to make that investment. You can't allow other companies to come in and undercut them right away before they can make their money back. So we had to regulate the rates. But other than like transportation and utilities, that's almost never been done. And it's really not a good idea in a free market. So I don't ever want to go back to those kind of days. But I also know that it is going to require some government regulation to fix this. And it's just some of these things would have to be mandated, no different. And look, I'm pretty, hardcore libertarian. I don't even think we should have a minimum wage. But I think we also have to put in protections on the other end so that you can have a market that would allow no minimum wage without becoming a disaster. And we need to have some sort of compensation and pay for time in trucking. I agree with that. But it also means we have to get rid of a lot of other regulation and get it the hell out of the way.
I agree with that. And I kind of almost see this in the same sense as, what was back in the 1800s when we were having child labor issues and sweatshops going on and whatnot. I'll guarantee you there were people making the argument, well, we just can't afford it. Think of the inflation if we don't pay these kids 13 cents an hour to work, 15 hours a day. It's the same type of thing going on here. And very, very literally the same type of thing going on here. The big companies, they know that we are not being paid for our time, and they're going to fight us so that they want to not have to be able to pay us for working. And it's just crazy.
What do you think about this? If we pay by the hour, what about just eliminating hours of service completely? Why do we have hours of service in this industry? And people will say, well, it's a safety issue. Have you ever seen what we do to doctors? Have you ever seen what a doctor's schedule is like in his residency? Talk about a safety issue.
Yeah.
They don't have hours of service.
I don't disagree with you. I've also thought about the idea of, listen, instead of regulating us by the hour, why don't you regulate us by the mile? Say, look, as a driver, you can drive 650 miles a day. We're not going to put any time limitations on you, but that's what you're allowed to do. That way everybody knows kind of what's going on. There's no goofy expectations. The way we're doing things now, it's just problem on top of problem stacked on top of problem. And we have what we have. And some people have figured out how they're going to leverage this to their benefit, which is the big corporations. They're making a bunch of money off it. The economy in general has benefited from from this, I think, and it's the drivers, the 2 million drivers that are out there that have kind of, had to carry that economic burden with them. And I think if most people understood the working conditions and the amount of hours that these guys are working, that most people would be in favor of changing this system in a major way. I just don't think most people in the general public realize it. And I think truckers are our own worst enemies. We see all this craziness out in social media and the way we choose to approach things. And we're our own worst enemy when it comes to public relations and getting that point across, I think.
I agree. We're going to go ahead, John.
I saw some things there, on the road, and saw things while I was at Pittsburgh Power. What about some of these companies who have, shall we say, and do not think I'm anti-immigration. I'm actually very pro-immigration. I think we need them. I'm a great grandchild of immigrants who came here to work in the mills for next to no money. But, you've got some really, really recent immigrants out there in trucks, sometimes 2, if not 3 of them, pooping in the bucket and on the road nonstop, driving things down. Like, how do you combat that? Like if you've got people willing to do it for nothing, if you've got people out there cutting your throat nonstop, what do you do that allows these, the big corporations to be able to put profit above all? And if, you're not going to haul this freight cheap enough, someone's going to. And you've got companies who are sponsoring, folks that come in and do it for next to nothing because it's a way better life than they had wherever they were, and I understand that. But how do you compete with that? Like, what do you do to combat that? It's problematic. There's no doubt. Again, I'm not pretending to have all the answers. I love to have the discussion for people to bring up scenarios like this, so we all kind of understand what's happening in a better perspective, so we can make decisions on probably what we need to do. But I think it all goes back to attaching some sort of value to people's time and not basing it per mile or a percentage of load. I guess the percentage of load thing works if you're an owner operator, and the per mile works if you're the business owner or the operator. But if you're paying employees, time has to be a part of that in some way, shape, or form. Exactly what it looks like, I don't know. One thing I can tell you is I enjoy dealing with the technology of the trucks and figuring out gear ratios and stuff like that way more than I like dealing with this. But it as a person, as looking at my drivers, you kind of get a heavy heart looking at what's going on in the industry. And as long as I've been in the industry, and things have really not improved or gotten any better over the years. In fact, it's probably gone the other way. I would just like to be able to make a difference in some way, shape, or form in that regard. I kind of think I might have left my impact a little bit on the industry as far as, the down speeding and whatnot, and the fuel efficiency, and that's all great. But I think maybe it's time to see what else I can do to just, help raise that standard of living across the board for the employee driver.
There you go. Well,
that's the next mission. I think that if some of our owner-operators, I'll continue my man crush on Joel here. He's moved up a couple of points today even. If people listen to what Joel's doing here with the speccing of his truck and getting the efficiency that he does on the small business end, let's get back to that, because that's really our people. I mean, it's in this moment when it's going to be survival of the fittest out there, and if you want to call it a bloodbath or whatever's coming up in the industry, you need to listen. Like, you need to be in the right truck or modify your truck to do kind of what his does. He's out there proving concept for all of you and his business, and he's got a nice, strong business because of it. But, the single truck out there running around needs to listen to what's going on here, what Joel's putting out. This is a time when I think you can flourish. I think that the guys we're going to get rid of some of the bottom feeders pretty quickly, I hope. There are going to be others that are out there doing stuff for too cheap that are eventually going to go out of business. But, listen to what Joel's doing, and we'll be as efficient as we possibly can. And, I'd love to tinker some more. I mean, I hope when Joel gets his new truck, we get to play around with some stuff on it that I'd like to play with. But, and maybe, even farther proof concept and maybe even find some more fuel mileage.
Speaking of which, my new truck was released from the factory yesterday. It goes to the mod center to get some of the EAPU and stuff hung on it. I'll probably be down in Greensboro during my next dispatch. Goes right by Volvo headquarters. I'm probably going to swing in, and I'm expecting that. I'm hoping by the end of June I've got that thing out to where I can start, doing some of the stuff we've been talking about in regards to the suspension modifications and some other ideas I have, I think, which will help to not only improve the fuel mileage, but drive down maintenance costs in a pretty significant way as well.
Let's go to Mick in Iowa. Are you there this time?
Yeah, I'm here. Great discussion. I was just kind of, it did beep earlier, but then everybody kept talking, so I was just listening. So apologize if I did it wrong.
Let's blame Kevin. Kevin's struggling.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. Well, it's fascinating discussion, and efficiency is a tyrant. And I think, Joel, you're doing a great thing by investing in your people. I just finished listening to a book. I don't know who suggested it, but it's called Pastoral Song. And it might have been from Matt or maybe Joel Salatin or maybe you, Kevin. I don't remember. But anyway, it talks about a young boy who was raised on a farm in Great Britain. And he was kind of talking about how they went from working so hard, as a child with his grandpa to, bringing in the chemicals and things like that to make their lives easier. And at the end of in the middle of the book anyway, they were realizing how they just had destroyed their soil by being efficient because they were doing what everybody else was doing and trying to compete. And we do the same thing with I think it's in every industry to a point. We use up our resources, whether it be our health or our people or our equipment. That's another thing. Kevin, you talk about as times get harder, people start slacking on oil changes or maintenance. We use up our equipment to try to maintain our income, and we hurt ourselves in the long run. And in the meantime, we have these huge corporations that have figured out how to manipulate us into doing these things, and it enriches them, and we're left with nothing at the end. And I don't know what the answer is either. Maybe just having the wisdom to show restraint, like it says in the Bible and Proverbs. I don't know what the answer is, but how do you maintain? There's got to be a way to have the wisdom to stay within your means. And I don't know, when everyone else is doing everything around you, you're forced to make choices that end up hurting ourselves in the long run. And I don't think we even realize it until it's too late.
Well, I don't think we're forced. And I think, some of the things that Joel has talked about point this out. And we know that there are businesses and, fleets that don't suffer the same issues because they didn't get greedy. They weren't hogs. And that's, we also could have learned this in elementary school from the fable. Jack and the Beanstalk. You can't kill the goose.
Oh yeah.
You can't kill the goose. And when you become a hog in business and you just go out and grab everything you can grab, you're killing the goose. And then when the economy does turn like this, that's when we see the issues that we're about to see. This business that I'm in right now, it's one of the more challenging when it comes to this, because the goose for me is trust. People tune into this show, they listen, they buy things from us, they pay us for things because they trust us. And one of the things I've always had to fight with on partners. We partner with companies because we want to bring more value to our listeners and our tribe and our customers. But every now and then you get somebody that doesn't understand that concept, that you can't kill that trust. You know, I could come on here and I could do a blitz for 2 or 3 months where I just kept bringing in products and people would buy it. If I just said, look, I did all the work, this is the best product ever, people would buy it because I've built that trust. But it wouldn't take me long to kill that trust. If I were to just try to take advantage of the fact that people will listen, and if I say, look, you should buy this and here are all the reasons, they'll go do it. I know they will. But I could also kill that trust pretty darn quickly.
I agree, but I think also because it happens so incrementally, we don't realize we're doing that often.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's why running a business isn't easy, and it's not for everybody. There's a lot like that you've got to think about. You know, now the industry and the business of trucking, pretty challenging. There's an awful lot of competition out there. And when everybody starts doing things that cut corners, and sometimes it's very tempting to do the same, but you find the successful companies don't do that. They find other ways of solving those issues. Let's go to Illinois. Steve, welcome to the program.
Oh, well, thanks for taking my call. I thought I tuned into the Progress Channel there. I had to listen for a while.
It's Friday. You never know what to expect around here on Fridays.
Never know what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've got this figured out, though. My boss is just thrilled with me. My last fill-up cost me 41 cents a mile, and the fuel surcharge is 75 cents a mile. So
wow,
he's happy.
Wow, that's crazy. Holy cow!
It was kind of nicer when I was below 20 cents a mile, but those times are long gone now. But
yeah. So
fuel surcharge wasn't that much then. But
do they now actually believe that your truck gets the fuel mileage it does, or do you still have to pump some into your VW and into other things to make it work?
No, this is in my truck. This is in my truck.
I remember you used to have to get rid of fuel, though, as I recall.
Yes.
You remember that? Yeah, you were.
Oh yeah. I had to. I had to give my fuel away so that I stayed under the what was it, 9 miles. Yeah, 9 miles to the gallon, and if you got over that, they'd kick you down to 4. You know. And,
if they thought he was getting over 9, they beat him down. They said there's no way your truck gets over 9. It wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
Hey guys,
I've made peace with the fuel tax department, and I can't get over 14 now. And not 10
bumped it up.
10 was the new 9, and then 11 was the new 10, and then 12 was the new 11, and right now 13 is the new 12. So I haven't quite got there yet. But so I got to watch myself. I might have to be giving fuel away again. You know,
this is starting to sound like Common Core math here. And it's making me feel really old, because the first time I had to fight with FedEx, well, it was RPS at the time. The first time I had to fight with RPS about this issue, we were fighting about 7.5 miles to the gallon.
Oh yeah. I had that kind of Star too. Yeah, there's no way you can be doing that with that truck. No.
Right? Yeah.
You're the man.
It's like the first guy that broke the 4-minute mile or whatever it was, and then after he did it, everybody started doing it. So success breeds success, I guess,
That's competition. That's how it works. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The cool thing about you, I get the modern stuff doing it. I don't know why anyone's not gone down your path with some older equipment. It amazes me. It's one thing, not to discount what Joel does here, but I mean, it's one thing for Joel to get the numbers he gets with what he has, and Dick Morrow to get the stuff he does. I understand that, and that's what those things should do. They've been working hard to get it there. I mean, the manufacturers and the drivers and the right mods and so forth. But the fact that you do it with that thing of yours is pretty amazing.
Well, the people will say that my truck's not an aerodynamic truck. Well, I kind of turned it into a Mack hybrid. And the people that don't think it's aerodynamic has never been underneath my truck. It's the smoothest truck out there. So that brings up another thing, John. You were talking about the air dam on Freightliners, that go down so low. I see a lot of those Freightliner air dams damaged because you can't straddle a dead raccoon in the road or whatever. You break that stuff. And when I just had an air dam that went straight down, I gained nothing. It wasn't until I put the splitter. So my idea was to all that air that's below the splitter, you just kind of leave it there and, smooth out the rest of it. And it works pretty good. That's when I started seeing gains with working on the underneath of the truck. So,
yeah,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say Freightliner does a lot of testing on 84 through the gorge, and I was just following one the other day, one of their test trucks, and it had some of the craziest ground effects on it I've ever seen. Not practical in the real world at all. I mean, this stuff, it looked nice, but I can't imagine trying to deliver freight with this thing.
Again, do we specialize trucks to a point where that one just does P2P? Spoken of.
Maybe
stuff?
so. Yeah.
You do. Again, efficiency is efficiency, right? I mean, if you couple that with like some platooning or something, and rework the way the whole supply chain functions, and make sure those trucks don't have to do deliveries, right?
Yeah,
not
good point.
That aero package is going to go from one hub to another, and the things out there on the spokes will obviously have a different spec. But you limit that. Just a thought.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Steve. Anything else on your mind today?
No, not really. Well, my plans are on their way to the plastic people, so the prototype should be coming out pretty quick and some stuff. So hopefully we'll see some stuff soon for the trailers.
Good. We'll look forward to it. All right. We are going to wrap this up for the week. John, Joel, anything you guys want to end with?
I'm good.
Yeah, I just looking forward here to getting my new truck out on the road. We'll be seeing a whole lot more of it, and I'll try and get a lot more updates and stuff going on inside the 9 mile a gallon club, which I haven't been posting a lot in as of late, but that should change. Basically, been driving around the fleet truck that other people are in and out of, and so it's really hard to keep any accurate numbers. I've been putting some stuff up when I have, runs that I'm in the entire time, obviously, but I can park this thing in the yard and somebody may jump in it and, go deliver loads around locally and come back, and then all your numbers are gone. So my next one will be another dedicated truck, so it should be interesting to see. John, I'll have to get a hold of you so we can chat a little bit more about getting things set up for this thing and going from there.
Sounds good.
All right.
Awesome.
All right. Appreciate it. We'll do this again next week. It's a long holiday weekend. I won't see you back here till Tuesday, but we'll see you then for the Power Hour. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy always. do the hard work, and master the journey. Have a great weekend, everyone.